If you came to this video to learn about email segmentation, why it's important, how to do it, then that's what we're going to cover. But before we get started, I want to give you a very clear example of how to understand your segmentation. So I want you to imagine that you're running a humble diner slash cafe in the countryside, right? You're working 12 hours a day, you've got your small team who help you out with things, but you're there every single day, you're meeting the customers, you're serving food and drinks and all the rest, and you see some familiar faces, you see some people you've never seen before, and eventually you start to speak to different people in different ways. So you've got the pensioners who come in on a Monday morning who've got nowhere else better to be and love your coffee, and you speak to them about their wives or their dogs or whatever else they've got going on in their life. Then you've got your customers on Friday nights who are families of four who come in for your quiz night that you run, or you've got the people on Saturday, Sunday mornings who come in when they're going for a hike, for example. And then you've got other people who come in and you've never seen their faces before. You speak to them completely differently like you would the regulars that you're seeing every single week. You know, you're talking to the regulars about their lives, about asking them personal questions, making sure they're okay, helping them with things. Those people who've never been in your cafe, being a lot more transactional, you're focused on actually helping them make a buying decision. This should give you some idea of how you need to treat the different people that are on your email list. The people who've never purchased, you need to guide them to that purchase. You need to treat them with, well, you treat everybody with respect, of course, but you have to be a little bit more reserved than you would maybe if you were being a bit playful or joking with people who are existing customers who you know a lot better. You can afford to be a bit more risque with those people, but for the people who've never purchased, you've got to have a different approach. All of that is basically the exact way that segmentation works. And so if you're thinking about what segments to build, you're thinking about how to target a certain segment, just imagine that you've got a physical store and that person has walked in to your store. How would you talk to them and what would you talk to them about? My name's Jack Shaw. I'm the founder of Surefire Media. We routinely help e-commerce businesses just like yours to not only manage the segmentation, but every single element of email marketing to generate a return consistently each month. So by the end of this video, you'll understand the importance of segmentation, how to actually build segments inside of Klaviyo, and the mistakes to avoid to make sure that the content that you're sending to your list hits home and doesn't hit spam. All right, so before we actually jump into my computer and start building these segments, I want to stress the importance of this customer psychology principle first, so stay tuned. So in 2025, you will know just as well as I do that we're overstimulated. We've got information coming out of our ears. We've got people tweeting us, texting us, calling us, Instagram DMs, Snapchat messages, whatever it is that you use. Everyone everywhere is trying to get our attention all at once. And the result of this is that we're overstimulated. We have far too much information coming at us. It's no longer about access to information. It's now about access to the right information. And so as a result, customers are far more guarded with their attention spans. So when somebody checks their email inbox, they're not searching through every single email that's in there that wants their money or wants them to do X, Y, Z. They're looking for relevance, they're looking for personalization, and more importantly, value. Now you might be wondering, why on earth have I got cocktail party written on this board behind me? Well, I'm going to explain now. So I'm not inviting you to a cocktail party, unfortunately, but an important psychology principle that I alluded to earlier is this idea of the cocktail party effect, right? And what this is if you've ever been to a party before and you're surrounded by people, there's a lot of buzz and noise and people talking in the environment around you. But then someone somewhere in the room says your name, they say your name, and suddenly you lock in and you hear them, and they could be right across the room, but it's like you have Vulcan hearing to be able to hear what they're saying across the room. You know, you lock in on that person and suddenly all the external noise shuts out and you can hear what that person is talking about and why they said your name. So this is the cocktail party effect. I'm sure it's happened to you, and it's the exact same thing in segmentation and in digital marketing in 2025. And so you want to be doing this effect as much as possible. You want to stand out in that crowded room and make sure you get their attention. So let's now go into my computer and actually start building some of these segments. All right, so the first segment that we're going to build is the most obvious, which is your customers versus your non-customers. Now, what you need to do, go into list and segments in Klaviyo, click in the top right to create that segment, and then the first thing you want to do is click this box, click what someone has done, and click here and type placed. And that's going to bring this up, which if you're using Shopify, which hopefully you are, going to give you this metric here. So I can see that in terms of the people who've placed an order at least once in the last 30 days, up here this number is starting to populate, meaning that 1,700 people have placed an order at least once in the last 30 days. Now you can play around with this and you can put equals 15. There's no way somebody's placed that many orders. Yeah, okay. But you get the point. You can completely customize that however you like. For now, let's keep it simple. So we're going to do just customers. So we want to change this in the last 30 days to overall time. And then I can see there's 95,000 people there who've placed an order. But what I want to add is this very important filter here called if someone can or cannot receive marketing. So that basically filters out anybody who has unsubscribed from your email list. Now, don't worry, you can't contact people who've unsubscribed, so don't panic. But the reason why you should add this to your segments is because it gives you a more accurate portrayal of who is actually still subscribed on your email list. So rather than having however many customers, it said that I had 95,000. Instead, realistically, what we've actually got to target now is more like 39,000. So there we go. All right, so we give it a name. Let's say I'm going to put test here just to avoid freaking out my team. Customers all time. It's as simple as that. Now, these and or filters can be a little bit tricky until you're just going to have to get the hang of it, really. But the most important thing to remember is that when you're using this one and, it means that you're making the segment smaller because you're asking for more criteria. So I'm looking for people here who have placed an order at least once overall time and they must be subscribed, right? If I were to put or, it changes it completely and it opens the parameters for what I'm looking for. And as you can see, there's a lot more people there. So or is for expanding the segment and making it bigger, and is for narrowing the segment. So we've got this one. These are the people who can receive emails and they've placed an order. Another filter I like to add is this one, because they subscribed. This thing here, subscribed or never subscribed, this is a tin of worms that I don't want to open right now. Long story short, just stick with subscribed, and I'll talk about that on never subscribed versus subscribed in another video. For now, just stick to this. Those are the people that we know are customers. And then if we want to search for the people who are not customers, very simple. Simply click this, change it to 0, and then that's going to update to the new number up here, which is 16,000. Yeah, 16,000 people. So as you can see, there are about 17,000 customers who've placed an order at least once that are on the list right now. And there are about 16,000 who've never placed an order. All right, so that's how you do customers. Next, we're going to talk about your engaged versus unengaged. So we'll call this one engaged 90 days. And what we're looking for here are anybody who has opened or clicked an email within the last 90 days. So I'm going to change that to opened at least once in the last 90. I'm going to add an or condition because we want to make this quite broad, this segment. And we're going to change this to clicked. So clicked once at least in the last 90 days. And then of course, don't forget to add this additional filter here, can receive email because they subscribed. So you can see that from building this, we've got 25,000 people who've either clicked or opened in the last 90 days. If I wanted to shorten this because I want to improve my deliverability or I want just a more targeted campaign, then I'd change that to 30 days. And that goes down from 25,000 to 23,000. So you see there's not really much difference from the people who've opened or clicked in the last 90 days versus the last 30. So I want to show you something or a little bit different because you've probably seen these engaged segments before. What we do when we're trying to revive a poor deliverability account, and this is very good for also getting sales sometimes, is to use the highly engaged segment. So rather than doing this as an or filter, we change it to and, simple as that. And what you'll see here is there are 1,800 people now instead of 25,000. And these people are people who have opened an email and they've clicked on an email in the last 30 days. This is, so I'll update that there. When do you use this segment? I like to use it, again, when I'm trying to bolster deliverability, when I'm trying to get a lot of attention on a new page, for example, to help clients SEO, to boost their SEO in the short term. Yeah, it's quite a nice one to use, but predominantly we use it to boost deliverability. And then similarly, to identify the people who are not engaged, you just need to change this from at least once to 0 times. And I'm just going to update the time frame there for 90 days. And you need to make sure that this is an and filter as well. And there you go. That's your unengaged segment right there for the last 90 days. So they've opened an email 0 times in the last 90 days, and they've clicked an email 0 times in the last 90 days. So you'll see that I'm using this and condition here, and that's to, again, shorten the amount of people that it applies to, because if I click or, then it's going to be much higher, and it's going to include all of the people who have not clicked an email in the last 90 days. That's the majority of those people there. So a lot of people, or the majority of people, open, a much smaller amount of people actually click the email, and because I've put this as an OR filter, it has expanded the parameters, and therefore more people have come into that segment, which is not what you want when you're identifying people who are unengaged. So change it to and then it shortens the segment to about 7,000 people. So those people are currently what we would describe as unengaged. They will be going through a manual sunset flow soon, if not already, and then eventually they will be culled from the list because they're not engaging and they're dragging down deliverability. So that's how you identify the people who are not engaged. Okay, the next one is getting a little bit more complicated, and you've probably not used this before. We want to identify the people who have recently taken a meaningful action on the website, but they haven't placed an order, and they've also not really been retargeted. So let me explain what I mean. All right, so we're looking for people who have viewed products but no purchase 30 days. People who've been on the website, looked at something but not placed any order. So the first thing we do, we type in what they've done, viewed products, at least once in the last 30 days, and we give an and exclusion condition. We type in placed order 0 times in the last 30 days. So in total, on our email list, there were 1,600 people who viewed a product and they didn't place an order within the last month. And of course, I need to add this additional filter. This might make it go down a little. Well, it should. Yeah, there we go. So there's about 1,100 people who we can retarget there who have not placed an order and they were viewing something recently. Another way that you can get quite granular with this is you can add a additional condition to identify the people who've also not received a flow from a retargeting flow. So let me show you what I mean. So we're going to look for people who have received an email from a specific flow. So we type what someone has done, we type received at least once in the last 30 days, and then we add this additional filter here. We can change then other criteria that we can search for. So in this case, we're looking for a certain flow, which equals the browse abandonment flow. Okay, so now this segment has dropped down to 218 people out of the original 1,100. So to reiterate, these are people who viewed a product at least once in the last 30 days. They've placed an order also 0 times in that time frame. They can receive email, and they've received an email from our browse abandonment automated flow, which retargets people when they're viewing products but not ordering. So those 200 people, the reason why they've not received any email from that flow could be that they have added to cart, and so therefore they're receiving emails from the add to cart flow instead, or the checkout flow for the same reason. Or they could have been people who have been looking at products quite often and they've already triggered the browse abandonment flow within, I think, maybe the last 60 days is what we have it set to for this client. So on certain flows, you don't want to have them firing constantly. You want to add a bit of time for breathing room, a bit of a break. So these flows, unless you're changing them every month, they get stale very quickly. And so when you retarget somebody with an email that says something like, are you missing this? Did you forget this? Or whatever, you send that email after every time somebody is viewing that product, they're going to unsubscribe. So for that reason, we have a filter on it to make sure that anybody who receives a flow from us doesn't receive that same flow within, let's say, anything from a week all the way up to a few months. So in this case, these 218 people have been through, they have done all of these actions that I mentioned earlier, and they've already received the browse abandonment flow in the last 30 to 60 days. Now, I want to make sure that these people are not receiving any other automated emails so that I can target them with a campaign email to say, why are you not buying? You know, like you looked at something, but you haven't purchased. So I want to double check that this person or people have not received any automated flows from the browse abandonment, the add to cart, or the checkout flows, so that when I send them a campaign, it's completely new to them and they've not already been hit with 3 or 4 of these messages already. So I'm going to add this additional filter here, which is to what someone has done, received email 0 times in the last 30 days, add the additional filter where flow equals checkout. And when I do that, I can see that there are 217 people who have Again, to reiterate, viewed a product, not purchased, they have subscribed, they've not received an email from the browser management flow, and they've not received an email from the checkout flow in the last 30 days. So there's 200 people. The typical conversion rate might be 3-6 sales, maybe a little bit more. Times that by your average order value, and that's how much money is just sitting there in your list. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how granular you can get with these segments and how much time it takes to actually build them out and identify a strategy to target those people. Again, the bigger the segment, the better. That's quite a small segment there, but if you can get a couple thousand people in there and it's a very, very targeted group of people and you hit them with a very, very equally targeted message, then the chances that they convert is very high. All right, so this segment is where we're targeting people based on the interest that they've got or categories that they're interested in. Now, there's different ways you can do this. You can look at people who are viewing certain URLs. You can look at people who are buying certain products. But another way to definitely triple down on whether this person is interested is if they've already given you some third-party data that you've asked for previously. So here's an example that we've got now where we are selling chocolate in this particular instance, and we know that we've got 371 people who have told us what their favorite flavor of chocolate is. So we've got different flavors here that people could select and that they've already told us. I'm going to show you how you can do this now. Okay, so I'm inside of my personal profile here for this client. We do this all the time to make sure that these things are actually working, and we do this by adding custom profile properties. So if you scroll down here, you can see the existing profile property that I just showed you with the favorite flavor. So my particular favorite flavor is mint chocolate, and so that's what's saved on my profile. Now, how you actually do this is you click here to add a custom property, and then you give it a name and a value. So in this case, I'm going to add a certain property name, whatever, for the purpose of this video. Okay, so I've added in the property name and the value. So this is just a test. I want to know what people's least favorite flavor of chocolate is. So for me personally, that might be licorice. I don't even know if that's a real chocolate, but I don't really like licorice. So the least favorite for me is licorice, and I'm going to click add profile property. The next thing I'm going to do is go over into create a segment here, and I'm going to find that profile property. So the way we do it is we click this drop down again, and we click properties about someone, and we type in what I called it before, which was test least favorite equals, and then it's already coming up here, licorice, and then this number will be 1. We then call this segment, let's call it least favorite chocolate, for example. All right, so this is what your finished segment should look like. You've given it a name, you've given it the profile property and the matching answer, I guess. And you can see there's one person, of course, because that is me, and that is how you build a segment based on what people have told you they are interested in. So that's how you build segments based on what people are interested in. If you're wondering how you get that third-party data, there's various ways you can get people to tell you when they sign up, or you can send emails asking for it. There's various different ways, but long story short, once you've got that information, that's how you segment them. So a few things for you to avoid before you start doing any of this segmentation, or when you actually start sending these emails, is to avoid these 3 things. So first of all, you should know this by now, but sending to your full list, big no. Make sure you're not doing that and you are taking advantage of these different segments. Number 2 is just doing it by gender or geography. These can be really, really powerful, but Klaviyo's own ability to guess people's gender is not 100% accurate, so don't rely on it too much and don't go too heavy with the messaging. And the geography, similar situation. I've seen my own profile populate in various parts of America for no reason whatsoever. So don't rely on that too much unless you're ironclad certain about that data. And the third one is actually keeping the cold subscribers that you've got. I know that it can be quite tempting to not want to get rid of a large chunk of your email list if they're unengaged. But just remember that Klaviyo's feature lets you suppress these people, meaning that you can remove them from your list and remove them from your bill as well. So the more people you keep on that list, the higher your Klaviyo bill is going to go. And if they're not converting, they're not even opening your emails, then they're just dead weight and they're costing you money. So don't keep them, suppress them after you've given them a fair shot at coming back to life. But focus more importantly on these segments that I've mentioned, especially your engaged ones, because they're going to make the majority of your revenue. So hopefully this has given you a good idea of what's possible with segmentation and literally just how limitless you are when you're doing this for your existing list. The more data you've got, the more ability you've got to break it up into smaller pieces, but just make sure that the segments you build are not tiny. If you're sending to 3 people, don't bother, you're not going to get sales. But if you're getting segments that are at least a few thousand people in size, then you're going to see some good return from that, and it's going to be worth your time to actually build targeted emails for those people. If you like what you saw today, if it gave you some ideas, if it helped you to uncover a mental block or finally understand segmentation and what you can actually do, then please do subscribe. Please drop a comment and let me know what you think of these videos. Are they trash? Are they too high level? Are they too detailed? Am I not explaining things? I don't know. Drop me some feedback. Send me a DM on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever you want to do. Or subscribe. Feel free to stick around because hopefully there'll be a lot more of this. So yeah, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.